Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for coming up here today.
Thank you.
For 50 years, Title X family planning funding has been managed successfully by the state of Montana's health department. In fact, last year, Montana passed a law that prioritizes awarding these funds to comprehensive health care providers like community health centers rather than abortion centers like Planned Parenthood. Last week, your department pulled more than $2 million in funds from the state of Montana and awarded it instead to a pro-abortion nonprofit that has pledged to funnel these funds to Planned Parenthood. This loophole does a runaround Montana state law. It violates the federal Title X law itself, which says that funds cannot be used to support projects where abortion is a method of family planning. This isn't the first time that you've abused taxpayer dollars to get around state laws. Since last year, you also deployed Title X funds to try and counter Texas's life-saving Heartbeat Act. You've told this committee repeatedly you would follow the law. From what we've seen here in these two examples, that's not the case. Mr. Secretary, why should Congress give you a 40% increase in Title X funds that you've requested when you're abusing these funds to get around my state and other states' pro-life laws, contrary to federal law and the will of Montanans who don't want to subsidize the abortion industry with their tax dollars?
Senator, first let me thank you for the way you posed the question, because I know that we all have some very deeply held beliefs when it comes to the issue of abortion. But our beliefs are not the law. We must be guided by the law. And as I said when I was first here for confirmation, we will not only follow the law, but we will make sure we enforce the law.
Has your team reviewed the Montana state law that is very clear on this issue, that prioritized for these exact reasons so that the feds wouldn't come in, pull $2 million, basically usurping the laws of Montana because of a certain agenda that you're driving here relates to abortion?
Senator, with due respect, it's not an agenda. It's the law that we have to follow.
Have you looked at the Montana law? We just passed this law, and you've circumvented the law and pulled $2 million and reallocated it against the will of the people of Montana and the laws of Montana.
Senator, as a federal department, we must abide by federal law. That's what we are doing when it comes to our family planning program money, and we will continue to abide by the law. We respect what a state may wish to do in deploying some of its resources, but we have an obligation to follow federal law.
Well, we'll look forward to further discussions on this as you have gone around the laws of Montana, literally dollars allocated and have been pulled back. I want to talk about Title 42 for a moment. In Montana, we're a northern border state, so you're probably wondering why is a northern border state raising the question of what's going on the southern border. Well, it's because we're a northern border state with a southern border crisis. Our communities in Montana have been devastated by the inflow of drugs, particularly Mexican cartel meth, and now fentanyl, as well as heroin. And what's happening is our Border Patrol agents are overwhelmed by the flood of illegals coming across our southern border. It's a zero-sum game. It's a zero-sum battle because the resources are being used to apprehend the illegals coming across, and they can't spend the time needed here to stop the drugs that are flooding across the southern border by these Mexican cartels. With this drug crisis that we see in Montana, it comes as well a massive increase in violent crime, nearly all of which, if you speak with law enforcement on the ground, is tied directly to the drugs flowing across the southern border. Now, instead of being tough on the border, this administration has taken an outrageous step of ending Title 42 removals. There was a border sheriff, southern border sheriff here last week that says we have a crisis on our hands today. Removing these Title 42 provisions turns it into a disaster. It's been widely reported that DHS is making preparations for as many as 18,000 illegal immigrants per day. Mr. Secretary, given the CDC's role in this decision, can you discuss the extent as to which you consider the potential impact of rescinding Title 42 that would have on illegal immigration?
Senator, thank you for the question. And if we focus on what Title 42 is, it is a authority that is granted under statute to deal with health conditions in the country, usually for purposes of quarantining. What CDC had to do in implementing Title 42 is determine whether or not, based on the health conditions in the country, we could take measures which otherwise wouldn't be allowed by law to try to isolate or quarantine individuals. That's the purpose of Title 42. CDC has considered current public health conditions and recent developments within the COVID-19 pandemic and made the decision based on health considerations. What you've spoken to, which you raised some really important considerations when it comes to immigration law and also our border enforcement. Those are not necessarily public health-related conditions. President Biden, his first day in office, sent to Congress a proposal to reform a very broken immigration system, but we cannot use a health care law.
And President Biden also rescinded the Remain in Mexico policy when he was sworn in as well, which has been a direct contributor to the flood of illegals we're seeing on the southern border. So I'm out of time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank my colleague. And since there was a question about Title 10, I just want to make sure everybody who's following this understands that under federal law, Title 10 can be used for contraception and for family planning. That's under federal law what it can be used for, and we're going to put into the record some further analysis of that. Let's see. Next will be, Senator Langford.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Secretary, thanks for being here. This is a long day for you already. We've been popping in and out, heading to votes. You've been trapped in the chair for a while going through this, so I appreciate your engagement. Let me do the unusual thing between the two of us to give you some compliments at the beginning. Can I do that?
Absolutely.
Your team at CMS and their work on DIR fees is something that I have pushed for a long time on this. I am pleased to be able to see that there's actual work going on with CMS in the DIR fees. That's a very big issue, especially for rural pharmacies. Continue to be able to do the work. There are a lot of people that are counting on access to rural pharmacies and other pharmacies based on that work. Just don't allow entities out there to be able to water everything down with what actually needs to be done. Keep going all the way through.